Hello, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion today on assessment tools and culturally responsive learning environments. We kindly request your attention for a brief moment in the spirit of transparency and utmost respect for our community. We have some information we'd like you to read on this disclaimer screen. By taking a few moments to read through this disclaimer, you empower yourself with important information regarding the boundaries of our knowledge sharing environment. Please take a moment to also read through this slide. Then together we will embark upon some new and exciting topics in early childhood education. So this panel of experts was created to provide real-world examples of two very important topics in early childhood education. So the first topic today we're going to cover is assessment tools and their purpose. And the second topic will be about inclusive and culturally responsive learning environments. But before we get started, we want our panelists to please introduce themselves. Tell us how long you've been in education and how long you've been with UAGC. Teresa, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Handy, and I have been in education for a long time. As a parent, 20 plus years, but as an educator, 12 years. I worked as a kindergarten teacher, which is my tribe, and then I worked as a first grade teacher, fourth and fifth grade, and now I'm in higher education. And I've been at UAGC for almost 5 years.
Amazing. Okay, Lori?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Tess. I have also been in education for a long time, all total 39 years. I owned a childcare center for 17 years, and then I taught fifth and sixth grade for 7 years. And most recently, I have been a reading specialist and multilingual teacher in my school district. And I have been with UAGC for 1 year.
Awesome. Okay, ladies, let's get started. So your first question is, what is one strategy you use for inclusive and culturally responsive learning environments? And Teresa, let's go ahead and start with you.
Well, I love this question. I think as a parent, I witnessed my own children having a learning environment that was not always responsive to them. And I remember when my daughter, who's now 17, was starting preschool, how I took up, multicultural, crayons, and I took up the paper and everything to make sure that she could feel seen in the classroom. And as an educator, I always really worked to make sure that I could bring my whole self into the classroom and share my differences in a way that allowed others to be more comfortable. And I can remember when I use literature a lot for that, and I've done some workshops on that in the past too. But I can remember that my hair, which is in my summer style now, braids, but I have natural hair, and we would go out for recess, and my hair would be straight like Lori's hair before recess, and after recess it would just expand. And so the kids were like, whoa, what happened to your hair? So it was an opportunity for me to explain to them how my hair reacts to humidity, but also to allow them a safe place to kind of have that curiosity. And so with that came a lesson though, right? You just can't walk up to me and touch my hair. You have to ask permission to do that. And so I used a book called Don't Touch My Hair multiple times to help children learn about boundaries. And we would use hula hoops, and we would read the story, and then we would do some role playing as the instructors, and then we would also let the children kind of practice it with their peers, because sometimes it's hard for little ones to hear the word no from their peer, right? And so helping them to be comfortable in saying, this is my personal space, and have that agency in telling their peer, you can't touch my hair. So literature has been a great way. And I would say since 2010, the literature around diversity has tripled or quadrupled in terms of titles that you can access for all the different types of diversity that can show up in your classroom. And so that has been really one of the ways that I have always incorporated a culturally responsive culture and how I raise the cultural competency of my students by introducing them to literature, which then opens up the door for more discussions about their home life, their family structure, their religion, and all of those important identifiers that our children enter the classroom with.
Love that. That's awesome. Okay, Lori.
So in my work with multilingual learners, I work with students in kindergarten through fifth grade. And recently, in the past couple of years, we have seen a large number of newcomers coming to our schools. It has been increasing every year. And when I speak of newcomers, I'm talking those students who have just newly arrived in the country. Most of our students have come from Mexico, Central and South America. They come with no English. They come with limited or interrupted or very informal schooling from their home country. And most important of all, many of these students are dealing with a lot of trauma, whether it's trauma from what they've left or their journey here. And so to create a culturally responsive learning environment, the number one thing for me and what I try to impart upon our teachers is safety and security is always first for these students. I think a lot of times teachers think that they have to be able to speak the language of the student to make them feel included. And I tell them that's not the case. Greet them with a smile, a hug, whatever they need, give them the tools in the classroom, a soft area where they can go and just be by themselves. One of the strategies that I use and I share with the teachers is before the student arrives, I will take pictures of the teachers they might see in the school, different areas of the school, because I cannot assume that they know what different things are. They've had probably very different schooling in their home country. And I will put it together in a booklet and laminate it, and that will be kind of their comfort that they can bring with them. And it allows the classroom teacher to also communicate with them without necessarily having to use their language. And so just making them feel safe and secure is number one for those newcomer students.
Both of those are
Oh,
amazing.
I wanted
No, go
to
ahead.
add, thank you, Tisha. I wanted to add something when she was speaking, when Lori was speaking about safety and security. I can remember with a JK class how we were talking about skin color. We had a situation where one student said, I don't want to play with you because your skin is one color and whatever. So that can be very unnerving for a teacher, right? When students say those kinds of things, but those are also doors that are opening for further conversations. And so when that happened, we started talking about melanin and how all of us have melanin. And there are amazing books on how to explain this to children. And we talked about how my melanin is busier in my skin than, say, yours, Tisha, right? So when we explained it like that. We all got in a circle. We all put our hands in together. And even amongst the children, like, wait, you have more melanin than I do. And these were all white children, right? And so they were so excited to see that they also had melanin. And so what happened is they took that information home from the classroom. They took that information home from the classroom where they had shared with their family and their siblings. And they came back and we also let them create their own paint. So they were able to mix paint where they could use for the rest of the school year to talk. And that's how they were able to do their self-portraits, which were much more accurate than just choosing a random color. So when we're talking about safety and security, we're also talking about that emotional piece too, that is so important.
And I
Yeah.
think that's awesome because I'm just going to chime in here for just a second. My nephew, when he was born with a birthmark all the way down his arm and clear onto his hand. And he always has questions about that. And he's learned to talk about his birthmark and talk about things like that. But what a great activity that would have been for him too, because he's completely different on one hand and one of his hands isn't. So I think every teacher comes up with a way to make their students feel safe, secure, and to teach these different things. But I love both of your ideas. So thank you.
So let me switch gears here. And I'm asking, what is your favorite assessment tool? And can you kind of describe it and its purpose and what age level you'd use it for? Teresa, I'll go back to you.
Sure. So I work with younger children. So I use a lot of exit tickets and questioning. I love the flexibility of exit tickets and questioning because it allows students to share what they want, what they've learned in the way that they want to. So for example, they can answer in their own words. They can share if they want to do it, if they want to respond with using a block, or if I ask them what is a shape, they can show me either by drawing it or using blocks. So giving children options in those exit tickets was always so important to me, and also giving them the flexibility of not even responding if they didn't want to at that time. I think giving children that kind of agency and power over their sharing their learning is so important. So another thing I do with exit tickets and questioning is it allows for me to take a response through audio or video. So during the pandemic, it was really interesting to me that I shared some stories online, and the students were able to respond to the story questions through artwork, through drawing, drawing artwork, through video or audio because of the app we were using. And it was interesting to see who chose to do what and when they chose to do it. And so you were able to see some of their environment. You were able to see their parents jump in. You were able to see the detail in their artwork. So questioning allows me to assess the children in a way that can also reflect their cultural background. So I can use things from their culture to help me explain or have them explain something to me. It allows for different types of learning styles, which I think is so important. Some children are more verbal than others. Some children are reading earlier. And then a well-crafted question allows for you to really dive into that critical thinking that we want children to share and demonstrate their knowledge base. And so having the flexibility of exit tickets and questioning allows for you to really personalize that learning experience for that child, and also allows you to dive in deeper and ask, probing questions, which I think is so important for young learners to learn how to express their learning and to share their thoughts and their opinions about things, even if they are, they may not be fully formed, but it's always so interesting to see them beginning to develop those critical thinking skills.
I like that you talked about that, because when you say exit tickets, because I've been in the college world for so long, I think of those as written. And I thought, how does she get her little ones to write an exit ticket? And you don't. It's developmentally appropriate because they're doing the skill that they can do to show you what they know.
And it's sometimes a whisper in my ear. Sometimes it's a come over and talk to me. It teaches them how to, at the end of learning, to share their learning, but it also allows them to do it in a way that they're comfortable, and it allows them to have some power over that. And I'm really big on little people having agency over their learning and how they share their knowledge with adults, so they don't feel that pressure. I have a 17-year-old and she talks about pressure all the time. I'm like, I don't pressure you, but it's amazing how children internalize pressure when we ask them questions about their learning. And so giving them agency over that is such a good way to kind of begin to kind of calm that emotion down in those students.
I love that. How about you, Lori?
So again, going back to working with my multilingual learners and newcomers in particular, we all know at the elementary level, these kids have so many tests that are given to them throughout the year. And then our multilingual learners actually have an additional one. We give the access test here in Wisconsin. And so I like to be very laid back and informal when I am assessing students. I want it to be comfortable for them. I don't want them to feel like it's, another test that they're taking. And so similar to Teresa, I will allow them to show me what they know in different ways. With newcomers who don't speak the language, I have a set of cards that I've created. They're just small color cards that are laminated with different common items that they might have encountered either at home, in their own country, in school. And it gives me an idea of their vocabulary, first of all, but I allow them to identify those objects in their home language first. For me, strong literacy, strong vocabulary in the home language can be a good predictor of their ability to acquire English. And so I want to honor their home language first of all. And so by just showing them those pictures and then being able to identify it in their home language, and sometimes they might have the English word for it, and that's great. With the younger students, I like to have them draw a picture of anything. It can be about familia or just something, maybe an experience, and you can get a lot of information from them that way. So my reasoning for assessing those newcomers is just to get their background, whether it's family background, cultural background, and then again, just a little bit of knowledge of where they are with their home language vocabulary, because that's going to be a good indicator of their ability to acquire English down the road. So very simple, but very effective, and it gives me a lot of really good information.
I love that. I wanted to jump in for just a second and say that my favorite assessment is portfolios. I used those with my pre-K students, my kindergarten students, and even my gifted and talented 3rd through 6th. Kind of goes back to Dr. Handy. I like to give my students ownership of what they're learning. They can pick what they want to put in the portfolio. I can also tell them what they're putting in there. At the end of the year, the portfolio was really, really thick. And I still have parents 25 years later telling me, I have looked through that portfolio more than one time. You have no idea how much I love it. And now my students that were in college, they're looking at their portfolio from when they were in pre-K. And, you know, I started on day 1 and we did the portfolio clear until the very last day of school. It showed all of that growth. They were able to put in the work that they were really proud of. So a portfolio to me is my favorite way to assess. There are so many different ways to assess students. We all know that. So this panel has been amazing. You ladies bring a wealth of great information. That's why we chose you. Thank you so much for being here, and we hope you will join us again soon.
Thank
Thank you so much.